Hey guys, it's finally time for my full review of the Dell Venue 10 Pro 5056. I already had a quick brief hands-on back in October, but now it finally has been released. I finally got enough time to play with it and I want to share my thoughts with it, give you my opinion and tell you if it's worth buying or not. So let's not just waste any more time and get into it. Here we can see it, here it is. First thing that I want to show off are the bezels, because as you can see they are quite big, but due to its hefty weight of about 680 grams you will need that space to actually hold on to it. It's also definitely not the thinnest one, quite boxy and bulky, but that's I think of compromise. I'm not quite sure if they couldn't have maybe done it a little bit thinner, but it feels definitely great. It's definitely sturdy enough. It has this soft touch coated rubberized back here. There is a little bit of a gap here, but usually it doesn't really bother me at all because it's usually built quite substantial. It does bend a little bit, as you can maybe see here, but due to its size that's absolutely fine, and this is something that you won't ever do. So let's take a look at the ports here, and a little bit of an apology because my camera has a little bit issues with the autofocus. Here we have the headphone jack, volume rocker, micro HDMI, one of the two speakers, USB 3.0, USB Type-C. Here we have the dock for something, for example, like the keyboard dock that I unfortunately didn't get this time. Here we have the Kensington lock, the second stereo speaker, SIM and SD card tray, because yes, it has 4G LTE connectivity. The Windows button on the right side on the top, we have the power button, the 8 megapixel camera on the back, and the one on the front. This would be it. I really like all the ports are being on the right side, also a good amount of ports, so all here has been done quite nicely. So let's turn it on and check the screen. And the first thing that I want to show off is I'm not quite sure if that's a bug or something, but once I unlock the device, now for about 7 seconds I can't pretty much do anything. With the mouse I can, but the touchscreen, even as you can see, it does respond. It shows the pointer, but nothing happens. And now I actually have control about it. So let's talk about the display. 10.1 inches IPS, a resolution of 1920 by 1200, so a 16 by 10 ratio. Sharpness is absolutely fine. As you can see here, everything is really nicely done. Scaling of about, I think it's 125. In my case, I think 150 was the default case. Worked for me out really nice. The white level is something that I'm absolutely pleased with. Absolutely nicely balanced. Really well done. Black levels, if I turn off the screen, you will maybe be able to see that there is a little bit, and it doesn't really work, there is a little bit of light bleed in the right upper corner, but something that you really shouldn't bother about. It's something like around here, but this is something that you don't usually see, and it's not really an issue. The blacks itself are really nice. The colors are absolutely well done because really nicely saturated. They are vibrant, they are vivid, definitely not oversaturated, definitely more on the accurate and natural side. So all has been done here well. Let's check the brightness here. This would be 100%, this would be 0, 25, 50, 75, and as you can maybe see, the precision of the touchscreen isn't the best. Sometimes it has a little bit of trouble picking up my touch. I usually would have used about 60-65% of brightness, but due to the increments of 25 here, I just stick with 75%, which is quite bright, and 100% is definitely bright enough, but 50% should actually be more than fine enough for most of the people, because I tend to use my displays brighter. And as you can also see, viewing angles are absolutely solid, even though it maybe wouldn't look like it here on the video, so don't really bother about that. So let's check the sound here, and I want to show off a video just so you can see that, and this will also show you off the screen. 100%.
Guys, and welcome to another Q&A. I haven't done one in ages, but I wanted to have a good reason to actually use the camera again, try some lighting, try some better camera settings and so on, because right now I'm trying the first time 4K just to see how it would look in editing and also, but one thing that I really noticed about this new camera,
that should be good enough. And as you did see, I had a little bit of trouble placing it right. I just think Windows tablets just aren't that precise for some reason, as maybe something like an Android device. So the speaker is here on the left and on the right, and if I used it like this, I actually did block it quite often. This is a little bit of an unfortunate thing. I would have wished for them to be slightly higher. But as for the sound itself, I gotta say really nicely done. Maximum volume was absolutely fine. I would have wished for maybe like 10% more for headroom. But if you have a media player like VLC where you can go over 100%, it actually gets louder. It doesn't really distort. Highs are clear. Almost a little bit harsh at sometimes, but actually quite nice. Mids are solid as well. Only the bass is lacking a little bit, but overall the sound is absolutely fine. Definitely gets my full recommendation here, no problems. Let's check the performance here. The first thing to show off would be the eMMC speed. I have the 128GB version here. As you can see, the speeds are okay. Nothing to really brag about. It's absolutely fine for a device like this. I have the version with 128 gigabytes, 4 gigabyte RAM is the default here, and the Intel Atom Z8500. The Surface, for example, uses the 8700. And I want to make off here a scrolling test. Let's start off with Internet Explorer, and this is something that actually never happened before, but I wanted to leave it here in the review because the software is a little bit buggy, but I will talk about it later. As you can see, pictures have been loaded wrong, but if you use the Edge browser or Internet Explorer, as you can see here, this is really nice and super buttery smooth experience. No problems here at all. If we go into Chrome, Chrome works a little bit less smooth, but actually with a touchscreen enabled device, really good. With the mouse, all of the browsers work absolutely fine. And as you can see here, Firefox has the hardest time to provide us really great performance, but I had these issues on every device with Chrome, or I mean Firefox, because Firefox just isn't really smooth and not optimized for a touchscreen enabled device. But if you use it with a mouse, it absolutely works fine, and it's actually not that bad for a touchscreen device with just an Atom. Now, what about the actual qualities? I gotta say one thing. 4 gigabytes don't seem to be the issue here, even though I had like 75% used all the time, and if you have a lot of tabs open, it definitely gets a little bit more sluggish. Something I definitely don't want to show off here because it just wouldn't look pretty. Because I just think the Intel Atom is a little bit overburdened. It just feels a little bit troubled because it's a lot of times at 100% and it gets into trouble. It gets sluggish. If you, for example, now let's check, for example, here a Twitter app. Universal apps, no problems here. Those work really nice. As you can see here, this is super smooth. So if you're mostly using universal apps and do more lightweight tasks like Word and Office documents, that all works fine. But the moment you try something a little bit harder and push it with more tabs and everything open, then it will get sluggish. I didn't really try out any video editing because I just don't think the Atom is suited for it. It works, but I think the experience definitely won't be great. If you want to know more about the gaming performance, I would recommend you to check techtablets.com, the channel. I will link it somewhere in the description or in the info card, because he reviews a lot of Chinese brand tablets that use the same CPUs or very similar ones, and he also makes gaming reviews where you can check the actual performance, because I'm not quite so sure what kind of games you could play on this device and have a great experience. Definitely older, lower end games. For heavy games, definitely not. Battery life, now that's the one thing, and I have to check the battery. A full charge needs about 2.5 hours, which is okay, definitely not an issue here. Let's check the actual battery life. We have a 30 watt hour battery, even though it says I think 32 on the stats. As for the battery life, I got usually something at around, as you can see here, 4.5 to 5 hours of use. Here it shows me 6. This was with 50% of brightness, the other ones were with 75%. Here something went a little bit odd, so I don't think that is something you should have to bother about. The connected standby is something that I had a little bit of trouble, and yes, definitely forget those values because sometimes just something went wrong. But the connected standby was very shaky. Sometimes it used like 0.5% an hour and sometimes it used like 2% an hour. So I think they need quite a lot of optimization here still, which I will get into the software part as well. But the battery life so far itself, I gotta say, if you use a higher brightness, 4 hours should be still the minimum. And if you use something like 50% and lower, use lower end tasks, I would even say 6 hours are definitely possible. So average of about 5 hours of screen on time is what I would say. Now the software. I can't really show off anything because it's very stock Windows. There is not a lot of Dell bloat and now additions here. So it's pretty much just what it is, but there are a few bugs. You saw the one in the Explorer, you saw the one with the touchscreen just not responding, and there are a lot of smaller other quirks where just some things hang, some things are just optimized, and I think since this device has just been released, there just need to be a little few more updates coming. Other than that, it actually works out quite fine. So I'm done with the detailed part, and what was usually the recap now is called, or has been rebranded to, deal breakers, and I want to talk about these. So let's start off with the deal breakers, design and build quality. I definitely don't feel the build quality is a deal breaker because it feels quite solid, no problems here at all, but the design, maybe because due to its heavy weight, it's definitely a little bit harder to use it for a longer period of time. If you use it with the keyboard dock and all that, things are fine. So I would say it's not enough to be a deal breaker unless you want a really lightweight device. The display, absolutely not. The display is super nice, really sharp, great color calibration, bright enough, all good here. The sound shouldn't be a deal breaker at all because loud enough, tonal balance was fine, so all good here. The performance for a lot of people could be, but I think you really have to know what you are getting into if you use an Intel Atom powered device. If you mostly use it for content consuming, browsing, emails and all that, it works out fine, but then maybe you find also a little bit of a few lighter devices on the market. But if you plan on getting more productive, do a lot of heavier office document and things like that, then it will be hard. And even with the 4 GB that aren't the issue, but the CPU itself, I think so far it's a little bit of a trouble. One thing that I didn't mention in the detail part, yes, it does throttle from about 2.2 GHz in just CPU load to about 1.6 GHz. And if you add GPU load to that, it even goes down to about 1 GHz or something like that. Temperatures go from a CPU temperature of about 32% degrees Celsius, but the cores itself show me like 75 to 85 degrees Celsius. So it definitely gets warm and throttles, but it only gets actually warm here. Nothing you really notice if you hand it in the hand, because it's really just this small point and nothing that I would consider to be that bad. Battery life was fine, I would say. Of course, if you use maybe a mobile device like on Android or iOS, you get a lot more battery life out of it. But since this is still a kind of full desktop machine, 5 to 6 hours are actually not that bad. The software is the one thing that could be a deal breaker, because I don't think the battery will be, but the software shouldn't be one if they fix things. If they don't fix things, I would say it still wasn't bad enough to be a deal breaker, so it's fine. So would I recommend it? And the thing is, I'm not quite sure where to position this thing or who it is for, because if you are looking for an Intel Atom powered device, there are a lot of Chinese brands that have alternatives like Chewy and all those. So check out Tech Tablets for those alternatives. But there is also the even more higher priced Surface 3. This one sits kind of in between. It starts at around 450 to around 600, depending if you use the 4G LTE connectivity, the disk space size of 64 or 128 gigabytes. So it's kind of in between. In terms of build quality, I think it's definitely better than the Chinese brands, but I don't think it's better than the Surface. So it's kind of in between. If you get it for a good price, it definitely doesn't really make much wrong. But it also really doesn't impress me too much, because for its size, I would have wished for either more performance or even more battery life, or they just could have made it a little bit lighter. But as I said, all the qualities are really good for what it is. And you really have to know if an Intel Atom powered device is good enough for you. If it gets all your needs, then it's fine. But I would definitely prefer you or recommend you to maybe check a Core M device, because those are a little bit more expensive, but also a lot more snappy, a lot more responsive, and just way more capable. Still not good enough maybe for content creation, but for an overall workflow, they just do the better job. So to sum it up once again, no real flaws, but also nothing groundbreakingly amazing, just a little bit too heavy, because for me the weight on the longer term was a thing. If you use it with your keyboard dock and actually use it more as a laptop, the weight is less of an issue, but then you also could already buy a laptop for that price. So I think I've covered all the pros and cons. Leave me anything in the comments if you have any question or something to say, if you want to know anything else. And if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel, and also maybe reshare this video, share it with others. I would say that's pretty much it. I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.